Last Friday, in an unexpected turn of events, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte arrived unannounced at the Oval Office of the White House. His unscheduled visit triggered a critical disclosure. The head of the Atlantic Alliance publicly highlighted Washington's deep frustration with President Donald Trump's mediation efforts to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. With only 7 days remaining until the centennial mark of his administration, 93 days past the self-imposed deadline, President Trump faces the stark reality that his pledge to end that war in one day remains as distant as the moment he first uttered it. Prior to taking office, Trump declared with unwavering confidence, "If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well, I know Putin well. I would get that deal done within 24 hours. That war has to be stopped." These remarks were part of a broader set of assertions in which Trump tied conflict resolution to financial and military leverage, insisting a deal would be a 100% easy under his direct supervision. Simultaneously, he extended his promises to other global theaters. He guaranteed that Chinese President Xi Jinping would never dare to talk about Taiwan under his watch and credited himself with halting a really bad actions by North Korea. However, as the self-declared deadline approached and passed, confidential sources at CNN revealed that the president had expressed private frustration over the complexity of the negotiation. According to these insiders, Trump acknowledged to his advisors that ending the Ukraine war has been harder than he thought, and that brokering a deal between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky proved more challenging than anticipated. Tensions escalated recently when Russia launched its worst aerial bombardment on Kyiv since last summer, resulting in at least 12 civilian casualties. That strike, occurring at a moment Trump believed negotiations were underway, drew an unusually sharp rebuke from the president. Addressing reporters in the Oval Office, he stated, "I didn't like last night. We were in the midst of talking peace and missiles were fired. I was not happy with it." This rare public criticism of Russia diverges from his typically more lenient stance toward Moscow, underscoring the mounting pressure on the White House to demonstrate tangible progress. Before Rutte's appearance, the president had met with Norway's Prime Minister, Jonas Gahr, accompanied by Finance Minister Jensen Stoltenberg, who served as NATO Secretary-General during Trump's first term, 2010-2014, earned a reputation as a whisperer, capable of persuading Trump to uphold US commitments to the Atlantic Alliance, preventing consideration of an American withdrawal. During their recent meeting, Gahr and Stoltenberg reiterated the necessity of a firm stance against Russia and reaffirmed European unity on defense matters. Yet, it was Mark Rutte's sudden arrival that proved decisive. Stepping out of his official vehicle on the south grounds of the White House, Rutte addressed the press and stressed the alliance's cohesion, warning that the initiative for a ceasefire now rests with the Kremlin. As he put it, "I worked with him for 4 years between 2010 and 2014. We all agree in NATO that Russia is the long-term threat to NATO territory and the whole Euro-Atlantic area. Something is on the table for Russia in terms of a peace deal with Ukraine, but it's up to Russia to bend. The ball is clearly in the Russian court now." This message sharply contrasts with the optimistic rhetoric Trump displayed on the campaign trail, highlighting the gap between expectations and diplomatic realities. While the White House acknowledges the magnitude of the challenge, doubts persist over whether US pressure alone can compel meaningful concessions from Moscow. In parallel, the state of the economy remains a recurring theme in presidential rhetoric. Trump has revived his promise of a swift turnaround. The economy is not good. I will make it good. Trump's going to turn the economy around. I did it, actually. I did it twice. We had the greatest economy in the history of the world. Yet recent macroeconomic indicators paint a more nuanced picture, with persistent inflation and global markets on edge amid geopolitical tensions. This divergence between bold claims and empirical data adds another layer of complexity for the administration. As President Trump advances into the final week before his 100-day milestone, he confronts a dual challenge: achieving concrete progress toward a ceasefire and bolstering public confidence in his economic stewardship. The intervention by NATO Secretary-General with its direct appeal to Moscow, underscores the urgency of clear diplomatic steps, while the Norwegian example and Stoltenberg's prior success illustrate that political persuasion can yield results, even with unconventional personalities. In summary, NATO bombshell revelation has laid bare the White House's profound frustration and exposed the fine line between large-scale rhetoric and the intricate realities of diplomacy and finance. With 93 days elapsed and the presidential deadline now in the rearview, the administration's ability to transform declarations into deeds will determine not only its credibility, but also the stability of an increasingly fragile global order. Furthermore, behind the scenes in the West Wing, a network of advisors and cabinet members has been quietly recalibrating US strategy toward Kyiv and Moscow. National Security Council meetings convened this week underscored a growing schism. On one side, hardliners urged an escalation of sanctions and direct military assistance to Ukraine. On the other, pragmatists cautioned that overextension risked a broader confrontation with Russia. This internal tug-of-war reflects the central dilemma confronting any administration: how to maintain credibility with allies without igniting a wider conflict. In closed-door sessions, Secretary of State Anthony Richards reportedly warned that weakening sanctions before tangible progress on a ceasefire would undermine US leverage. At the same time, Defense Secretary Maria Nguyen advocated reallocating budgetary resources to reinforce NATO eastern flank, proposing increased troop rotations in Poland and the Baltic states. Sources familiar with these discussions emphasize that Nguyen's team is preparing contingency plans for rapid reinforcement should hostilities spill across current fronts. Meanwhile, in European capitals, the response to Rus' Oval Office intervention has been cautiously optimistic. German Chancellor Ingrid Mayer issued a measured statement acknowledging that the ball is indeed in Moscow's court, but stressed that Germany remains committed to providing Kyiv with defensive systems and humanitarian aid. France's President Julien Moreau, speaking at a G7 press conference, echoed the sentiment, underscoring the need for unity and warning that any sign of weakness now could embolden further aggression. Such unanimity among leading NATO members suggests that Rus' comments were intended not only as a signal to Russia, but also as reassurance to allied publics that Europe and North America stand together. On the diplomatic front, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has publicly welcomed any US led initiative while simultaneously urging patience and material support. In a recent address to his parliament, Zelensky remarked, "We appreciate the attention and engagement of the American president, but our people expect concrete deliveries of air defense systems and ammunition, not merely rhetoric." His plea reflects a broader frustration in Kyiv. Hopes raised by grand promises must translate into sustained military and financial backing if Ukraine is to hold its ground and negotiate from a position of strength. At the same time, vocal critics of the administration in Washington have seized upon the discord. Congressional oversight hearings set for next week will call senior officials to testify about the administration's ceasefire strategy and resource allocation. Leading Republican and Democratic committee chairs alike have demanded clarity on decision-making processes, budgets, and benchmarks for success. They are particularly interested in assessing whether Trump's personal involvement has expedited or hindered progress compared to conventional diplomatic channels. Economic ramifications also remain under scrutiny. With markets jittery over the possibility of an expanded conflict, the US Treasury Department has established a task force to monitor ripple effects on global commodity prices, supply chains, and currency stability. 4. Inflation, which dipped slightly this quarter, could rebound if energy prices surge, or if counter-sanctions disrupt critical imports. Analysts note that investor confidence hinges not only on domestic policy, but heavily on geopolitical stability, a domain now squarely under Trump's public spotlight. In parallel, public opinion polls reveal a mixed picture. A recent survey by the Center for Strategic Surveys showed that 48% of respondents believe the administration's handling of the Ukraine crisis is effective, while 45% rated it ineffective or uncertain. On the economic front, only 42% approve of Trump's management of inflation and jobs, a figure significantly lower than campaign season optimism. Such data suggest that while a plurality remains supportive of a robust stance against Russia, confidence is fragile and contingent on demonstrable wins. Analysts caution that the coming weeks will be pivotal. If Russia concedes to meaningful talks, perhaps by scaling back air assaults or allowing international observers, Trump could claim a diplomatic victory just in time for his 100-day milestone. Conversely, any further delays or setbacks risk reinforcing narratives of overreach and undermining both domestic standing and global credibility. Ultimately, as the administration navigates this critical period, the defining question remains whether grand strategic ambitions can be matched by operational execution. The Oval Office stage may be well suited for headlines, but in the arena of high-stakes diplomacy, tangible outcomes, ceasefires, stabilized front lines, economic resilience will determine whether this chapter is remembered as a landmark success or a cautionary tale of promises unmet.